Yo, what's good, YouTube? What's good? It's Stormybman, and I am back. Welcome to another edition of the Friday Night Chop Session with Stormybman, the Late Show, where we are calling this one. This is episode 83. We're calling it Disputed Championships, okay? For this Friday, October 23rd, 2020. And I know you guys have been hanging on for a minute, so apologize for a few minutes delay, but I was just trying to get everything together for you. And we are here now, and we are ready to chop it up for the Friday Night Chop Session with Stormybman. Gonna welcome my brother Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens in here with me, and we're gonna talk a little boxing this evening for a late version of the Chop Session. What's going on with you, Reggie? How you doing, bro?
Doing good, OG. Man, ready to get into this chop session, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's something else, man. You know, we get these fight cards and they be happening at all different times and whatnot. But we are here nonetheless, and we are ready to get down to it. I'm a little bit excited about it this evening. We've seen some matches take place a little earlier, and they were pretty good. We can get right on into what we had a chance to see earlier, man. You know, DAZN had another fight card on this evening, and you know the way they do things over there at DAZN, man. It's like, you know, it's not like we would like it to be all the time, but nonetheless, every once in a while, even a clock is right. You know, a broken clock is right twice a day. You know what I'm saying? So that was the case this evening for DAZN. They managed to hit one out of the park this evening with this card that they put on. I was a little bit, you know, I was a little bit, you know, kind of torn if I was going to watch it this evening or not. And then at the last second, I said, well, you know what? I'm paying for it, so I'll watch it. So I decided to go ahead and tune into the lead card that featured this evening, Estrada versus Cuadras, and the co-main was Chocolatito taking on Gonzalez. So got a chance to see those fights, and I thought that they were quite entertaining for a co-main event. These guys really did their business this evening, and I just like to, you know, go ahead and toss the mic to you real quick, Reggie, and ask you, what were your thoughts going in here and getting a chance to see these fights this evening?
Yeah, I didn't catch that they were coming on until they come on about 6 o'clock my time. I didn't find out till, I think when you texted me about 3:40 or 4 o'clock my time is when I found out about them. And they turned out to be real entertaining, man. I enjoyed the hell out of myself watching these fights, which ended up being like last minute fights to me. They were epic, and especially that main event. That main event really lived up to being the main event fight. That was some epic shit right there.
Yes, sir. It's funny, we don't always get a chance to get that. You know what I mean? It's like we'll sit around and wait and get disappointed and everything, especially where DAZN has a tendency to draw their cards out, you know, for hours at a time. Even this one tonight was probably about an hour, a little too long, you know, maybe too long of a break in between the prelims and the co-main. But that being said, I mean, I didn't want to see them cleaning up the ring and all of that. But you know, that co-main was pretty doggone good. Chocolatito, first of all, Chocolatito against Gonzalez. Reggie, were you able to see that one, the part of the co-main?
Yeah, I caught that fight. Yes, indeed.
What were your thoughts on this one? And I'll give you mine following up.
Man, this was a good fight, man. This is a real good fight, man. I thought the young kid coming in here for his third opportunity at a championship fight. I thought he would come out here and make a great showing of himself. And he started off in the first 2 rounds almost doing what Teofimo, seeming to do what Teofimo was able to do to Lomachenko, and that's kind of freeze Chocolatito up with his offense. Anytime Chocolatito moved in, first of all, the guy worked well with that jab in the first 2 rounds. Worked the jab well. He took the steps back, made sure he maintained the distance to keep Chocolatito right at the end of his jab. He fired off the right hands. Anytime Chocolatito got on the inside, he fired off those quick combinations. He was just catching Chocolatito. I was like, oh, man, this is going to be a bad night for Chocolatito. The guy hit to the body well in those first 2 rounds. Looked very, very good in there. Then following that going into that, finishing that second round, getting ready for the third round, where his coach gave him an instruction, the kid abandoned every single word the coach told him. Stop standing in front of him. Do not stand in front of Chocolatito, because even in those moments in the first 2 rounds, the only time Chocolatito got off is when the guy stood there and didn't move and staying off those ropes. The ring was kind of small because, like, you take 1 step, you're on the damn rope. But the thing was to stay off the rope, move the head, and that kid didn't do none of that crap. The jab abandoned. Chocolatito began to start laying in his punches, connecting down to the body and viciously punching the guy to the head. And it was just Chocolatito applying way more pressure than was supposed to be pressed on him, because the kid started standing, and the kid could have used that ring much better than what he did. And he laid on the ropes, thought he would do something off the ropes, and he really didn't do anything. And as he got deeper into the fight, he began to fade, and Chocolatito began to just turn up on him. And it ended up just being bad for this dude. And he kind of really blew it. He blew it for himself, just based on not sticking to the fundamentals of what would have worked for him. And the jab would have been everything for him, and a little bit of movement. But he went against everything those coaches told him getting ready for that third round. And Chocolatito did what he's supposed to do. Chocolatito just walked right in on this dude, closed the distance, worked the jab very well, got his punches over the top of this guy's jab, went down to the body, jabbed up to the head, and he just fought well, man. But I think with a little bit more pressure, because Chocolatito was also fatigued badly. He just dug deep, man. Them cats is warriors. He just dug deep because this kid didn't apply the pressure he should have put on Chocolatito, and he should really kick himself in the ass for that. But that's all I got on that.
Yeah, it was one of those cases of the inexperience to me about the young guy, doing what he was doing, not following the corner. The corner is there for a reason. The corner is there to tell you proper instructions. They can see things on the outside that you may not see on the inside. And it's interesting about the instructions about getting off the ropes, because Gonzalez was being told by the corner, keep the fight in the center of the ring and to get off the ropes. But he was staying on the ropes, and it wasn't all of Chocolatito pressing him against the ropes. I think he felt confident that Chocolatito wasn't necessarily hurting him, and he was looking to counter strongly in that position. But what was happening was he was giving Chocolatito the play, because the appearance of being effective with the aggressiveness, pinning him up near the ropes, and even if the shots weren't hurting him and he was blocking a number of them, it was the activity that was causing him to lose the rounds. But as you saw, when he spent the round and got the fight in the center of the ring and was able to shoot his shots with a little bit of distance between them, he was really effective. And I had remarked that I didn't like how Chocolatito looked absorbing shots. He looks like a worn fighter, and this kid didn't have a lot of power. So it's like if he had a little bit more power, if he could have shown just a little bit more fire and put together a series of combinations, not just throw the 1, 2, 3 and stop, but to release or unleash volleys at a time, he could have totally taken Chocolatito, taken the play away from him, because Chocolatito had incurred like a lot of body shots from him. Those left hooks to the liver, he was bluffing. He was acting like he was still good, but it was the way when he would step back out of the heat that let me know that he wasn't good, because almost each and every time, you can go back and watch it, when he stepped back, he was taking shots cleanly. That's not a guy that's in a good place. That's a guy that's a little bit worn out, because you either roll out left or right with your guard up and everything, protecting yourself. Chocolatito was getting caught at the end of punches. And that's what usually happens to guys when they're a little long on the train. So, but maybe Gonzalez, his people can take him back to the drawing board, point these things out to him tactically, strategically, and teach him how to listen, because they are there in his ear for a reason. And I don't think they were telling him anything wrong. He just was a little stubborn. And you could tell Chocolatito wasn't really hurting him that much, because there were times when he was beckoning him in like, hey, come on, bring it. You know what I mean? So he was feeling a little confident and feeling a little cocky himself, but he wasn't doing the other things that could ensure him more rounds. I ended up scoring at 116 to 112 for Chocolatito. But there were a couple of points during the middle rounds where Gonzalez could have won the rounds had he just done some of the things that his cornermen were telling him. And it's very frustrating when you're sitting there looking at the TV and you're hearing the right instructions and the guy is not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And it's like you want him to just step up and do it. But nonetheless, Chocolatito won, and he'll get a chance to go on for a possible new unification now in rematch with Estrada. So, but that's how I saw it. Did you have any comments you wanted to make on my take on it, Reggie, or had you noticed any of what I pointed out?
No, I noticed what you point out, and I feel worried for Chocolatito going there against Estrada. I really feel worried for Chocolatito going in that fight. That's going to be a bad fight for Chocolatito.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree, because, he didn't, when he got hit clean in the face, it was like he freeze, like you take a picture, a frozen shot. And that's not a good indication. And I'm telling you, I say this all the time. Fighters take far more punishment in the gym than they do in the fights, because you train, you spar, and it's rounds after rounds after rounds of multiple week camp. So even with headgear on and things like that and larger gloves, the blunt force trauma to the head, Chocolatito looks like a worn guy. And he has had like 40 fights. So it's like 40 plus, right? And you have to take all of that into consideration. He shouldn't be matched up against any punchers. He shouldn't be matched up against any guys who have extremely high volume. But he's going to go in there with Estrada, who throws, he's not a high volume puncher, but he's a pressure fighter. He can box. He throws very short, sharp shots. And that's going to be very interesting, because I could see him, from even going from this point, I could see Estrada stopping him. If he could stop that young kid that he stopped tonight, who had far more energy and probably was juiced up with clenbuterol, he could probably handle Chocolatito with no problem. So those are my thoughts on the Gonzalez and Chocolatito fight. So, but if we go on into the Estrada Cuadras fight, this fight here, man, they fought once before, and it was like a very close, razor-thin scored fight where the judges had it all the same, like 113 to 114 straight across the board or something like that. And so these guys were in to really prove and separate, the victory, between one another. And it was interesting that in that third round, when Estrada got clipped, I was just about to, making a statement about him looking sharp and everything, and then he gets dropped. But I saw why he got dropped, which is something that he can clean up. But boy, is it right there on tape for you to see. Let me know what your thoughts are about this fight, Reggie, going in, you know, what you saw between Cuadras and Estrada.
Man, that was a goddamn war, man. and a war where I wanted to see the punch stats on that fight, man. There was so many damn punches thrown, and not just thrown punches. These were connected punches. These dudes were teeing off on each other. And the thing was the thing that really kind of declared the victor in this one was who was being more accurate and who was delivering the meaningful, accurate shots, and that was Estrada. Estrada mixes his punches very well. He throws from some of the most odd angles that you see in boxing, and they all have a nice impact on those punches. And it was him targeting to the body, hitting up to the head, countering well, countering between shots. His timing is perfect. And that was really it. And it wasn't even with the use of a jab. He knows how to trick a person into where, you know, he makes a person forgets where they at as far as distance. Like, he closes distance in a very sneaky way to me. That distance was closed and right on the inside, and that's right there where Estrada can go to work. And Estrada really went to work from that inside, just targeting the body. Even with the movement, Carlos moved around a lot, and it was almost like Estrada didn't have to do too much. His subtle movements will close the gap, and he's right there up on Carlos. It was like Carlos mind, plus that ring was kind of small as well, but it was like Estrada just stayed relaxed. He's real composed. He doesn't give off any kind of look. He poker faces his way through the whole fight. Even at moments where I seen early in the fight, he got hurt by Carlos, where Carlos ends up dropping him in that third round. Carlos rocked him. He looked a little bit buzzed. He had a little bit of time to recover. But Carlos fought well in those first 3 rounds. The first 4 rounds, should I say. There was just nice back and forth action between these two. This is my first time ever watching them. So they have that experience with each other. They were determined to get out there. Carlos mixed in nice jabs. He had some unorthodox angles of landing punches. And they can be anywhere positioned and still able to get a punch off. Whether they dipping down to the left, falling backwards, they can throw a punch off. Throwing in hooks, and they were just connecting to each other, man. It was a brilliant toss-up between those two. But as the fight went deeper into the waters, and you start to see the separation in the fight. Not saying that the separation was just Estrada blowing away, because the rounds were still competitive. They were still very competitive rounds, but I can clearly see where Estrada started to separate himself, and I begin to see the body language of Carlos begin to change, and you can kind of see it showing on his face. But due to his pride, his heart, and everything, he willed his way through it. Regardless of how tired he was, how hurt he may have been from some of those punches, he still fought his way through. And then just when you think he may be hurt, bam, he lets off a flurry, start landing combinations, working the jab, gets back moving around. And Estrada, once again, closes that gap, hits him with some nice heavy hooks. Working the body, coming back up to the head. He got a few jabs up out of there. He just started systematically just breaking Carlos down. But in that 11th round, he landed that big. Matter of fact, not even just the 11th round. He hurt him early in that round. I think it was like round 7 or something. He hurt Carlos down to the body. He hurt Carlos down to the body, to the right side with a left hook. And when Carlos started putting that, he left that right hand locking up around the body. I think that's when things began to change from that body shot. Kind of affected him. Not sure if something was cracked or that pain just never left the body, and Estrada just started finding work, going back to the body. Carlos was starting to position himself to not get hit there. He was catching a lot of shots, holding on to him to the punches that he'll catch. He'll catch punches of Estrada, hold it too long, and Estrada started going to work. And a lot of times when Estrada was going to work, he was tapping over there to that body and stuff. But it just began to change after that point. And when the knockout came, he was dropped in that with that first knockdown, hurt a little bit. He seemed to recover. It was when that second knockout came, that was all she worked. He was hurt pretty bad from that second knockout. Fell to the canvas on his face. went to get himself up, wobbling around the ring, and I could tell he's hurt. But the heart of that dude, when he got up from that, he still fought his way through, and I thought he was going to survive. Like, oh, man, here we go. Letting his punches go, moving around. He just didn't tie up enough, and that was all she wrote. Even when he got hit with the shot that the ref was like, no, let me save this guy, get him up out of there. Carlos was mad about it. Carlos still wanted the fights. I'm like, man, this dude is a fighter that has to be saved from his dang self, man. But that was an epic war right there. That's all I got on that. Epic war.
It was a great fight. And a couple of talking points that you mentioned. One, dude, have you seen a smaller ring for a professional fight? Come on, that was like a closet they were fighting in, man. I was remarking about that early on. I was like, wait a minute, these guys, that looked like a 10 or 12 foot ring. It was like you could take 2 steps to the left or right from the center of the ring and you'd be near the ropes.
It was barely enough room for a ref to be in there.
I know. It was like, that was a little ass ring. You remember when the fighters like go back to their corners, you know, after the referee's instructions to start the first round, you know how guys stand in their corners and the ref is in the center. It was like they weren't that far from the ref. It was like that was kind of weird. But anyway, another talking point that you mentioned was the fact that when I noticed early on that Estrada's left hook was definitely going to factor in the fight tremendously, and it did, because it was so effective. Like you said, that left hook to the liver, whether it was to the ribs or something, that made Cuadras want to keep his right at home. It opened up the right hand that dropped him the second time in the fight, because he was so busy trying to guard against the left that he left himself wide open for that right that dropped him that second time. You know what I mean? So you're absolutely right in the fact that there was something there that had kind of taken something out of him. And I think it happened early on. Could be a bruised rib or something like that, because you remember early in I think it was like the 3rd round or something, 4th round, his legs looked a little funny. Remember, Cuadras, he got hit with a couple of shots and his legs didn't look good. He looked a little jelly-like. And I was like, oh, he's hurt. And he was moving around. He started using some movement, but then he would dive in with his combinations. So he was very effective, you know, with what he was doing. But he was really more concerned about protecting his body. I noticed that very early on in the fight, and it did come back later. Now, another talking point was Estrada. There, you know, as I was remarking about him taking good care of himself defensively and everything, just as I was about to make a remark on it, he got hit and got dropped, and that was the 3rd round. But he does something that's a terrible glitch. He ducks down to his right where his eyes are almost looking at the canvas, and he don't see shots. So when Cuadras hit him and followed up with that other shot, it was like an uppercut and then a left that knocked him down, and he went straight back on his butt. He didn't see those shots coming, and it was because every so often during the fight, he ducks down that way. He needs to learn how to, when you go down, you roll over and come out. You don't just stay in that position. And when he stayed in that position, when he got dropped, Cuadras timed him. He timed him perfectly. And I was like, oh, snap, you know, because he got hit with the shot so cleanly. And he still did it through the rest of the fight, but not as much. But he's going to have to stop that and knock that off totally. Did you notice that yourself, Reggie?
No, yeah, I did. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was bending down, like with his face, where his eyes were looking at the canvas, but not at his opponent. And it's okay for you to keep your eyes on your opponent when you bend your knees and you crouch down or whatever. But he was doing it with his head kind of like down, like he was going to duck a shot, but looking straight down. And he got caught. He got caught flush. And that was the difference with him being knocked down as opposed to just, blocking the shot or slipping it and being able to get out of the way or counter. He's going to have to clean that up. That is just, and then there was something else that happened where when he got aggressive on the inside, he was reckless with his head. The headbutts that they were having were typically caused by him. And if you're the guy that's trying to be effective with inside fighting, you got to learn how to move your head and keep your head on the opponent's opposite side or whatever, or under his chin or whatever you do. But you can't go in there just with your head up, because he got ended up cut on both eyes. And that was not Quadras' doing. That was his own doing. He was banging his head against the other guy and ended up with 2 cuts, one on each side of his face, which is something like that could have totally been avoided. You know what I'm saying? So it's like those were little things that I noticed during the fight that they could really come into play. I mean, a busted eye where a cut is really bad, you could get stopped on cuts. I mean, you gotta, it's so much that a fighter has to pay attention to, but with a little bit of tweaking here or there, they can turn things around for themselves and put themselves in a far better position. But he was fortunate to be able to break Quadras down. And I made the clenbuterol comment because, man, did you see all that acne that boy came in with on his back?
Say stuff about bumps on people's backs, yeah.
Yeah, man. His back looked like a road map to someplace out in the jungle or something. I don't know, man. That's why I made the clenbuterol comment. But yeah, there was something going on with that. Yeah, I'll just leave that right there. But it's like, anyway, it didn't help him because he lost. So it's like, there you go. So yeah, we got some people out there. There was a comment. There was Soccer Training Club made a comment out there in the chat. Salute to everybody that's out there. I know we've been cooking since we launched live, fellas and ladies out there. So if I didn't salute you directly, salute to everybody that's in the chat listening to us right now for this late edition of the Chop Session. Soccer Training Club says, I would agree with Chocolatito not looking like himself, especially with what Rungvisai did to him. Yeah, he looks like a worn fighter. I won't say shop worn because he can still compete just like he did tonight, but they have to guide him carefully going on and going forward in his career because they can't put him in there with punchers. He doesn't respond very well to getting hit cleanly, and they can't put him in there with high volume guys. This is how you can protect the fighter and keep him preserved, But I know that they got this fight with Estrada on the table, and that'll be a competitive match for as long as it lasts. But I'll give Estrada the advantages. Now, if he happens to open up those cuts that were on Estrada, you got something cooking there. Not saying he should go into the fight trying to open cuts, but I'm just saying we know that Estrada has scar tissue now around his eyes, and that can always come back to play a part in the fight when you least expect it. So, but yeah, those are some of the talking points that I had on this particular fight, Reggie. Very entertaining. We have really been getting some good fights over this past month and a half since the name guys have been getting in the ring with one another. And I really look forward to fights on the horizon because we've still got a couple of months to go before the end of the year. And with what we've seen so far since, what has it been, September, late August, man, it's been worth tuning in. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So I kind of anxiously await, what's on the horizon. So, but yeah, that's those are my thoughts on tonight's fight with those co-main events for DAZN. I saw some of the earlier cards, and they were like 6-round fights and stuff like that. That was okay, you know, but they just kind of stretch it out a little bit too long with the gaps in between the prelims and then the main events. I wish they can kind of speed that up a little bit, because those cards don't have to last that many hours. They really don't. And they're kind of bad with that. But yeah, so, you know, and as we since we're talking about fights, Reggie, what we got tomorrow night, we got a nice card on Showtime where Sergey Lipinets is taking on Clayton in a fight where this is for the IBF interim welterweight title. Now, that's gonna be an interesting fight there, Reggie. Lipinets has been around for a while, and he's had some success in the sport. But I do believe that people should not sleep on Clayton. I got a feeling of those fights that may be set up for an upset. Clayton is from, I think he's from Canada. And I think the Odd Fella had been talking about this guy for a while, because and shout out to Odd Fella if he's out there listening. This guy, he's 33 years old, Reggie, but his record is 18-0 with 12 KOs. His nickname is the War Machine. And like I said, he's from Canada, but he hasn't had a chance to be on televised cards. So there's not a lot of film out there on him, but he can punch. And supposedly he had a decent amateur background and everything. He can box. He's 5'9", you know what I mean? And this might be a chance for him, you know, in this fight against Lipinets. You know, sometimes guys get into fights like this and they take on opponents and they think that, oh, okay, let's take this guy because he's not well known. He doesn't have a lot of fights and stuff like that. But Sergey, who has a record of 16-1 with 12 KOs, you know, his last loss, well, his only loss came to Mikey Garcia, where he lost a unanimous decision to Mikey, and he's 31. So, and he's 5'7", a little bit shorter. This could be one of those fights that turn up. And you know, there was a point during the 80s, Reggie, the late 80s, that Showtime, when they used to televise fights, they called it the network of upsets, because the name or so-called house fighters would go into matches there on Showtime and end up getting their butts beat. One of the main calls was the fight with Tommy Hearns and Iran Barkley. It was on Showtime, and Barkley upset Tommy Hearns with a knockout in that fight. So let me ask you, had you heard anything about Custio Clayton, Reggie?
No, I haven't heard. I was just on BoxRec looking up to see if I know who he is. I don't think I've ever seen him fight. I was thinking this is that white guy featured on ESPN. I remember some Clay guy. So no, I haven't seen this guy fight at all.
Yeah, if he happens to not be rattled by the bright lights of finally being on a network like Showtime, and his this is kind of like, it'll be a coming out party for him. We might see something take place like something that we mentioned on the Three Wise Men of Boxing last night. Kurt Sugar and I were talking about when Cool Vince Phillips knocked out Costa Tzu, who was, you know, Costa Tzu at that time was undefeated, beating everybody, going through the division of junior welter like a buzzsaw. And they picked Vince Phillips as an opponent, like, oh, you know, as a stay busy fight. I don't think he was even a mandatory. He was a what do they call it? When you're not fighting a mandatory.
Voluntary.
Voluntary. I can never think of that term. Voluntary title defense. And cool Vince Phillips come in there and knock Costa Zoo out, stopped him. I could see something like that happening. I don't know a lot about Custio myself, but I do know that Oddfella had been talking about this guy. And I also know that, you know, it's fighters like this, they be on undercards and stuff like that, but they don't always get airtime and stuff like that. And next thing you know, they get a shot and they come from out of nowhere. That's kind of how Buster Douglas came on the scene back in the heavyweights years ago. I look forward to the fight. I want to see the fight. I want to see what happens. But this is, you know, one of those situations that I do believe we could see something, you know. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I still expect it to be a good fight. I still expect it to be a contested match. And Lipinets is he's going to have to be sharp to be ready for this guy. So I don't know if they've announced what their undercard is going to be because I didn't look it up in detail to see who else. But I do know that this is the main event for the evening tomorrow night.
Yeah, I have the card pull up. They got Malik Hawkins versus the guy who end up having that fight that killed that kid Dadashov. So he'll be fighting Malik Hawkins on the startup to that main card, and then some kid named undefeated fighter Xavier Martinez versus Claudio Moreira, who Moreira's a pretty good fighter. I know about him as a southpaw featherweight fighter. Mm-hmm. Pretty good fighter. Has let me go back and look. I know he has a lot of knockouts, I believe. Yes, 24-4, 17 knockouts. So he's a pretty decent fighter fighting this 15-0 fighter who, the young fighter, 22 years old. So that's a huge step up for this kid, Xavier Augustine Martinez. Real huge step up.
Yeah. I'll tune in and watch the whole card and see, because you know you never know. And then some of the young guys that'll be fighting, you know, a lot of the younger guys, I don't know them, and I would like to see, you know, what the future is looking like. That's why you tune in for that. So it'll be some good stuff to see. You know, boxing is in a place where if you keep going like this, boy, you know, it's some good fights happening. You know what I mean? So all the guys got to do is just step up and do it, man. Just, hey, let it be known. That's why I wanted to title this episode of the show Disputed Championships, because, you know, we're always looking for boxing to provide us with undisputed, right? But what's disputed is the fact that the best are not always fighting the best, and the guys are not unifying the belts to the degree where we could get that one champion. And that's a good segue into something that took place earlier this week, where we saw one of the former fighters of the sport and stars of the sport, that's Floyd Mayweather Jr., come out and make some remarks about these sanctioning bodies and the belts that they create and everything, where they cause so much confusion in the sport, where you don't get a chance to see what you need to see because they have ulterior motives as far as, you know, making sure that sanctioning bodies get taken care of first. You know, they want their fees and everything. So I thought it was kind of interesting to hear Mr. Mayweather come out and make the remarks that he made. Now, I know you earlier today, I caught you had released something about Mayweather making those remarks. Am I correct in that, when you had something where you had something where you put it out there, what he had to say?
Yeah, I had put that video out. I think it was yesterday about him speaking on that, because I agree totally with him, man.
Yeah, I caught it today. And if you don't mind, I'll try to take a moment and just play the audio for what was said briefly, and we could take a listen just so we could have a talking point on this issue here, what Floyd Mayweather Jr. had to say. And hopefully that we can hear this. Let me know if you can hear it, Reggie, once it starts.
And I want to say this right now about the sport of boxing. I don't want everybody at home to hear me when I say this.
Can you hear it?
A belt.
No, I can't hear it, but I'll pull up on the YouTube and listen to my ear while we go through it.
Let's see.
This goes for any company. I don't care if it's Top Rank, if it's Golden Boy, if it's Mayweather Promotions, if it's PBC. There's too many champions in the sport of boxing right now. Too many champions. It's not a such thing as a super champion, not at all. And I'm not taking nothing away from no fighter. It's too many belts. And the reason why is let me tell people what's going on in the sport of boxing, why there's so many different titles and so many different belts. People don't know you have to pay for every belt that you win, there's a sanctioning fee. So now if a fighter wins an interim belt, he has to pay a sanctioning fee. If a fighter has just the regular belt, he has to pay a sanctioning fee. Then if a fighter is a super champion, then he has to pay a sanctioning fee. This is not good for the sport of boxing. When a fighter fights, every fighter is a champion. Now, after you see no belts is like a fighter winning an amateur trophy. Everybody's a champion. Everybody have a belt. Now we look at the lightweight division, okay? And I want to say the fight the other day was a hell of a fight. Congratulations to the winner. He done his job. He went out there and did what he had to do. But if Devin Haney is the WBC champion at lightweight, right? And Gervonta Tank Davis is the WBA champion. Now, it's safe to say that Teofimo is the champion he's the champion, the IBF and the WBO champion. But I can't knock what he has done, because I have to take my hat up to him, for what he has done. And then we talk about different fighters proving themselves. There's no different from Marquez. They're going to say, oh, Mayweather was the bigger guy. Remember, at one particular time, in 1996, before I went to when I was in the Olympics, I fought at 125 and a half. It's 125 and a half because it's 57 kilograms. So in that same year, I turned professional at 130. So we can't keep talking about guys. This guy is a small guy. To be the best, you must take risks. You must take chances. And if it takes going up in weight or going down in weight, that's the sport of boxing. That's how boxing works. And we look at Manny Pacquiao. He done the same thing. He takes chances. But then when he loses to me, guess what they say? Mayweather was he was the bigger fighter. It's always a catch-22 when it comes to me. So once again, I don't want to knock no fighter, but I'm tired of seeing fighters after the fight. Everybody got a championship belt now. Now boxing, all these belts is like trophies. The WBC, the WBA, the IBF and the WBO. Y'all gotta clean this shit up. Y'all have to clean this up. This is bad for boxing. Ain't there such thing as no super champion. You guys are just taking extra money from all these fighters, getting extra money from sanctioning fees. And this goes for my company as well. We got to clean the sport of boxing up. This don't look good. When you look on TV now, everybody's a champion. You see all these fighters posing with a belt. And then we got another guy at lightweight, which is Ryan Garcia. And then I look at Ryan Garcia, and he's a pretty cool fighter. And I don't take nothing away from him. He's with Golden Boy, and I wish him nothing but the best in his career. But before you can, and I seen Ryan, for an example, Ryan Garcia is one of the fighters that got in the ring holding the WBC belt and holding another belt. This is,
yeah, that's basically what we wanted to get out there about Floyd talking about all the belts and all of the young guys being able to have a piece of a belt and whatnot, and being, it confuses the audiences and makes people take sides for individuals, because you might have someone that you like, but it's not, you're not invested in the sport. And as long as you become divided on the individuals who participate in the sport, but not have the best interest in the sport, at the end of the day, what will happen is they'll continue to run this game on you. And they're running the game on the fighters too, because the fighters buy into it by saying, well, everybody loves me. Everybody supports me. I'm the man. That's my fans think I'm the best. Well, remember when it was one title, or if it was just the WBC and WBA, when a guy like Marvin Hagler had the world championship in his possession, everybody under him were contenders. And when they had to contend for the title, they had to sometimes fight each other. Contenders had to fight each other to position and jockey to become a number one contender. And in the meantime, the sport moved, because the champion was active and he's fighting guys. He's fighting the number one guy. He's fighting the number 3 guy. He's fighting the number 5 or 6 guy. And the other guys are fighting each other too. So it's like like calling the economy being stimulated. The championship, the championship caliber of the sport was being stimulated by the activity. When these guys get these belts, and the sanctioning bodies are loving the fact that they have multiple champions, because they can continue to collect those fees. These are the things that Floyd is talking about. And some people don't like what Floyd says. Some people think Floyd have an alternative agenda or whatever. But he is still speaking the truth about this, because even if he did profit off of it himself, there are things that he did that are no different from what Canelo is doing today. Remember, Canelo told the WBC, take a hike. I ain't got to fight who you tell me to fight or whatever. So they created a means for him to do so, to stay in their graces and stuff like that. That's like crapping on everyone in the history of the sport that came before him in whatever weight class he's participating in. But Floyd would do it. He'd win a belt, vacate it, do something else, win a belt, vacate it. That's what he'll bring his belts to the ring that he won. But a lot of times he's doing what he wanted to do by representing his brand. And his brand, once he became a champion, was a championship brand. In order to take that away, you got to defeat him in the ring. But you can't say that all these other guys are the best if they haven't beaten him. You could just say those are multiple champions, or even contenders who are under him, including at one time it was Canelo under him. And when Canelo fought him, Canelo couldn't defeat him. So it's like, there you go. But the fact that he said it, Reggie, what did you come away with this? Because I don't want this to be a situation where I'm just speaking and I want people to be influenced by my voice. But we're having a discussion about the situation with Floyd even coming out, because it was surprising to hear him say these things. But what did you come away with this, Reggie? Let's talk about it.
With the thing with the Floyd Mayweather thing is, he's hitting off on all things. When I watch these fights, OG, I can give 2 craps about these belts. And like he was saying, there's way too many belts. Every time you look up on these fights, someone's being crowned for something. Someone's given something they're not worthy of even fighting for. And even sometimes with some of these champions, they're putting up with title defense. Like even on tonight, there was a fight with what's that kid name? Martinez. Julio Cesar Martinez fought that guy, Caloros. And it was a title defense. That dude Caloros had come in there out of weight. It's a last minute replacement fight. Why is this even, if the opponent fell off, the fight should have been canceled unless another contender is on the board to fight in the champion. But here's once again, someone without the opportunity of earning the shot being get in there because they're overlooked being the easy pick. Now, said this dude would have knocked this guy out. Now a dude from the bottom has got an opportunity of becoming a champion. And even when these fights become vacant, these are lesser tier fights. They're giving fights, belts for guys from some international region. We don't know where people are rated. And even if there's a second tier to the belt, saying this person got a super title, he's supposed to be in position for this, and then he never gets the shot to fight in the damn champion. They just maneuver these belts all over the place. And the disgust kind of comes from coming from what happens in this Lomachenko thing with his labeling of being a franchise champion and all that stuff. And now that it shifts to where Devin Haney's a champ, like, so what happens now that Teofimo has the belt? Does Teofimo has to face any mandatories? No. Teofimo now being designated as a franchise champion doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to go and fight Devin Haney, and Devin Haney will never be a mandatory for him, so we'll never get to test out who is the best or who should actually be the WBC champion. And now Devin Haney's distinction with the WBC has changed. So along with all these belts being out here, these rules are able, these dudes have been free to shift the rules to however they wanted to benefit whoever they favor as being their favorite fighters, and kind of shift guys off to the weight side as far as where they're situated. I think at some point these belts and these fighters have to devalue these belts. These belts really hold no values to fans. I mean, fans don't know what is what when it comes to rankings, but they know what fighter is what. And when I watch the fights, I'll be barely knowing folks as champions, but I'd rather see the matchup. I enjoy the matchups because, for one, there's way too many champions, and I really don't know what is what unless I see someone put a video together speaking about the champions. That's the only way I find out about it, of what is what, because all the super stuff and I forgot what Mauricio Suma stated about the reason behind doing that, but none of the reason behind him doing it adds up. The only thing that adds up to it is the dollars, and that's the only reason behind it. And these fighters have to stop being stupid enough to taking on these damn belts, and they have to really start focusing in on just challenging who are the top guys out there, building the name for themselves in order to secure themselves financially. But to pay money for a damn belt, like, it's crap. And I'm sure a lot of fans don't realize that aspect of the fight game, that they have to pay for these titles. For a long time, for me following the sport, I never knew that they were paying for these titles and there were fees attached to it. Seeing when people are letting belts go and the possibility can be there, they don't want to pay these fees. This is one of the hardest damn sports to make a living in. But that's my thoughts on that Floyd thing.
Well, check it out. Just a couple weeks ago on the Three Wise Men of Boxing, where we were talking about some of the great fighters, right? And Kurt Sugar shared some information on the show about the fight that took place between James Toney and Mike McCallum for the first time. Now, going into that fight, James Toney was the IBF champion. Mike McCallum was the WBA champion, I believe. And if I'm wrong about this, I'm trying to say this from memory because Kurt explained it on the show. So I'm going on what he said. Because I don't have all the information recollection like he has. The WBA wanted McCallum to pay a sanctioning fee for the fight that was like 60 grand or something like that at the time. Forgive me if it's not the correct amount or whatever. But what was interesting was that the sanctioning bodies wanted to take 65 grand from McCallum because they wanted a certain amount of fee for someone else, and McCallum was like, whatever, you know. And then they wanted to take another 60 grand from him. And at the end of the day, he was like, man, forget this belt. You guys take your belt and shove it, And he basically fought Tony for for Tony's belt. Now imagine, that was supposed to be a unification match where you get closer to having one champion, right? So they made sure that didn't happen by coming at McCallum with all of these requests for more and more money from him to make him give up the title. That's all it was. At the end of the day, if he wanted to pay the fees, he would have held the belt, of course, but how much of that was out of his pocket? You're talking about over $100 and some thousand, almost $200,000 out of his pocket, where they were robbing him. And he's trying to do a good thing for the sport by unifying against another world champion who's respected like him. James Toney was in his prime. He was a well-respected champion at that time, had defended his title multiple times, and Mike McCallum had defeated the likes of Julian Jackson and what's his name? Donald Curry and guys like that. And there were other fighters who didn't even want to fight him for whatever political reasons or whatnot. Roberto Duran opted to fight Hearns instead of him. Tommy Hearns didn't want to give him a shot and this and that. So it's like, here it is. He's got a chance to really make a stake for his claim at the weight as a champion with James Toney, and they don't allow it to take place because they're steady trying to suck the blood out of the guy. You know what I mean? Do you know how much of a trip that is? It reminds me of, I watched the interview with Buster Douglas had done recently. It's online. You can Google it, Buster Douglas interview. And he talked about, people talked about him really bad after, he won the title from Tyson, but lost to Evander Holyfield. But what a lot of people don't know is that the months between, he beat Mike Tyson in February. He fought Holyfield, I believe, in October or November of that year. What people don't understand was the months that took place between him winning the title and defending against Holyfield, that his mom died. Don King, off of his victory over Mike Tyson, took him to court in litigation trying to say that Tyson beat him first and everything. And when they couldn't reverse that thing because the world saw Buster knock Tyson out, right? Then Don King went into a thing about trying to drain blood out of Buster because his fight with Tyson was his last contractual obligation to Don King. So Don King was trying to say, no, you still owe me some fights, right? Because he was the promoter of Mike and Buster, but Buster had fought his last fight. If Buster had lost that fight, he would have had to re-sign with Don King to fight any of the other heavyweight contenders, because basically Don King had all of the contenders with the exception, I think it was Riddick Bowe, Evander Holyfield, and Lennox Lewis as far as top contenders who were not with Don King. Everybody else was a Don King fighter. You know what I mean? So it was ridiculous. And so Buster ended up having to pay $4 million, okay, to Don King for freedom, and which he already had, mind you, and to be done with Don King so he could go on about his business, defend his title and everything. But it was so much mental anguish traveling back and forth across the United States through different courthouses because Don King was trying to do that to him because Don already got so many people in his pocket, right? So he can make these long drawn out court cases, just as Tim Witherspoon. He did the same thing to Tim. And so Buster went into the Evander Holyfield fight not at his best. And people talk about him where he weighed in at 246. It wasn't about the weight because Buster had weighed that in other fights. Matter of fact, I think it was either against Trevor Berbick or Oliver McCall. he weighed that amount against one of those two guys. So he has had success fighting at a higher weight, but it's the mental stress that Don put him through and the economic stress, the press of his wallet, that it really pulled at the guy. And don't forget, he lost his mom that year and everything too. So it's like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, it was about Don trying to control one of those belts. And that was the WBC at the time, because he and Jose Sulaiman were in cahoots with one another. And that's why when Buster took pictures for covers of magazines and stuff as the undisputed heavyweight champion, he was usually seen holding the IBF belt, because it's like that's the one organization that backed him right away, didn't give him any trouble or whatever. And that's the belt he mostly took pictures with when he went on Johnny Carson or whoever it was, David Letterman, whoever the show was when the heavyweight champ goes on after winning, he had that belt with him when he sat on that show. So it's like, imagine all of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know. But what we do know is what Floyd said has tremendous merit, and we cannot overlook that. You can like who you like in the sport of boxing, but you have to love the sport more than the individuals, because when you love the sport, you demand the best from the sport by putting the pressure on these people who are cheats, and they're corrupt vampires who suck the lives out of the fighters. They suck the lives out of the fans. They suck the lives out of anything that where the money comes from. They want more. And that's what Floyd was saying at the end of the day. So, you know, these are the kind of things that should be talked about. And remember, you can love a guy today, like whoever your favorite fighter could be today. And I'm not asking who it may be. I'm just saying, remember, that person will have a career. It will begin, it will commence, and it will end. But the sport remains. So when there's a new fresh face on the horizon or whatever, guess what? The game is still being played. You should want the game to be changed so that you can have the best for the next guy that comes along, or for whoever's presently moving along. Zab Judah has his own stories about dealing with Don King and everything. It's terrible when these sanctioning bodies do this to these fighters, man. So that's what I wanted to share on my end about that, you know, talking about, you know, what Floyd had to say.
Hey, remember when Monster Inoue defeated Donaire? You remember what the WBC tried to do and what he did?
Yep.
He rejected the hell out that belt. Like, get that crap out of here.
When they were putting belts on him and stuff, and he looked at that, he was like, nah. I remember that like it was yesterday, and I was going to say something about that too, but I'm glad you said it, because it's coming, you know, from your side of things, and you've seen it. But yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday. Inoue was like, I don't want that belt. You know what I mean? And that was good stuff. What if more fighters did that and took that position? Stop getting in front of the cameras and taking those photos. Check this out, Reggie. On the night that he won the fight, Tyson Fury took photos in the ring with the WBC belt. But since he left that ring, he has not taken any photos with the WBC belt. Do you know that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He don't prod around with them titles. He don't prod around at all.
Yeah, he don't walk around with those belts like that or whatever, and even when he defeated Klitschko. But that's a good thing. This is what I was saying, like, if Deontay Wilder is able to regain his title, he should do the same thing. Because look at how they're doing him. You know, they even gone so far as to say that he's done. He should retire or whatever. It's like this ridiculous. Not only do they disrespect you with what they're doing, robbing you of your purses with their fees and everything, but the disrespect, and then where they show what they think of someone else ethnic wise, and they give them all the graces and the glories and the provisions and all of that stuff. It's like it turns your freaking stomach, man. to see these things take place. But again, as a unified front, what the fighters have to do is, you know, Floyd says, y'all need to clean this up. The fighters need to clean it up. The fighters can clean it up by saying, hell no, we ain't doing it no more. That's it. You know? Because if you're good and you're knocking people out in the ring, the fans are going to come to see you. They don't come to see that belt. Go ahead, Reggie.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And that's the thing these damn silly ass boxers have to start understanding, man. And they need to be educated on that. The one thing, I'm a major boxing fan, but I've seen some stuff that's profound when I look at these UFC fighters, is Dana White try to pull that crap by introducing these things he's calling interim belts, which is no different than boxing having super belts. And the one fighter, matter of fact, the fighter fighting tomorrow, where they try to title him with an interim belt, he threw that belt on the ground. Like, don't ever put this belt around me. This ain't the title. This ain't the champion. The guy I just beat is not a champion. Don't ever wrap no belt around me like that. He dropped it on the ground. There's other fighters in the UFC who even speak on, I ain't no interim champ. They would never accept those type of titles. And they don't care about these titles. A lot of these dudes are realizing that these titles don't mean nothing. It's about who you have on your resume. And a lot of times they have undervalued what a champion is. It's like people don't care. When you look at people's focus, even with people who are champions, it's becoming to where this is how you know the belts don't mean anything, to where you don't even look at a person as a champion. You look at them resume-wise. And that's the same thing that Bud has faced. Many of these other fighters have been, Triple G has faced. Nobody cares about the so-called title defenses. They look at the resume because the thing that matters the most is who you fought. Even looking at Lennox Lewis, I don't even look at Lennox Lewis as a champion because that's my favorite fighter. I look at the fights that he's had. It's the work. Even when it comes to, like, listen to stories of Muhammad Ali, when you speak about that, I don't hear conversations about him being a champion. I hear the conversations about who he's been in the ring with. They base it on how his performances were. So that just shows you, man, fighters have to understand fans can care less about you being a champion. Reject these damn belts. Start fighting the best competition that is out there. And that's what it should be about. And right when that is done, then these damn sanctioning bodies start to do right by the fighters. But to be able to charge somebody, that's lawless, man. That's some lawlessness right there, man. To charge someone for a cosmetic item, like that's crazy to me. But that's all I got on that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's one of those things where, you know, you really have to look at it for what it is. And again, when you love the sport more than you love the individuals, like what happened in the NFL a few years back. Remember when Tim Tebow was kneeling like in a prayer or whatever after they scored or they did something on the field, and there was a small group of people who was like, oh, he should keep that out of football or whatever. But most of the people rallied around him, right? And they were like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool that Tebow's doing that. And the NFL kind of embraced that, right? It was like, oh, but years later, when my man took the knee for the cause of police brutality and stuff like that, then they want to say, oh, it has no place in football, it's un-American, it's this and that or whatever. Where was the same type of support for this gentleman that did this and looked at, you know, the crisis that we're dealing with, which could affect anyone, but it affected a few, which was a selfless thing as opposed to what Tim Tebow was doing. And you see the change and the difference. But if you're a lover of the sport, you shouldn't like what the sport did to him. Just like you were able to embrace Tebow, huh? You weren't able to embrace him? Come on. What is that? So it's like at the end of the day, I don't like that, man. And it's like you either all in or you're all out. You can't have your foot basically in there, you know, just testing the water, sticking your toe in there. You either gonna dive in or you gonna stay dry? Huh? That's the way it's gotta be. And things will change when you dive in. Huh? Because that means that you're putting something on the line. And it's usually called your rear end. Huh? You get out there and you do some things and you take life by the throat and make people stand up and respect what's going on here. And in boxing, these sanctioning bodies can go sit down somewhere when people begin to throw those trinkets down and start fighting each other and say, you know what? Let's have a non-title fight against one another to see who's the best. Huh? You think people still ain't gonna pay to see the fights no more because they not carrying a trinket? That is, people will line up as long as there's going to be the battles. The people will be there to see them and pay to see them. These guys gotta wisen up, Reggie. They gotta wisen up, bro.
Hell yeah, they do, and the teams around them do, and also like listening to like them older fighters like who was that Zaire Rahim, who's been coming on with Blue Blood, and I've heard other fighters state this about you got to watch who you trust, because when you think that you have a manager that's for you, some of the attorneys that's for you, you end up finding out down the line when you're stuck in a jam that a lot of these people collude against you. They are in cahoots of finding ways of finding, you know, they're finding ways of stripping money away from you.
Stripping
and they don't
your money away. Absolutely. That's why they don't want you. That's why they don't want you to have your own external, you know, circumstances of people who can handle things for you and everything. They want you to stay in the club. Huh? Because money, although it comes across your plate, it don't stick to your plate. Huh? And that's the way they want it. Why do most fighters end up broke and busted? It's because of those very type of things. It's not always guys didn't handle and manage their money well. That's the image that they want to portray, because that perpetuates the situation. What do people do? They'll say, oh, that ain't going to happen to me, right? But you double down trying to make sure that your accountant got this, that your taxes is being paid, that you know you taking care of your bills, this and that and whatever, and you find out that those people that you had on board are the main ones that's helping these things happen to you. See, there's a lot to be learned, man, from what happens to someone else. Not just the fact of looking at it saying, oh, that can't happen to me because I ain't going for that. No, you look at it and say, oh, what can I do that goes outside of the thinking of this box, you know? And then you begin to break free in that manner. But they don't want you to do that. And that's in anything in life where there's a lot of money transferring and crossing palms, man. We ain't talking about the average Joe like us, but we're talking about when it gets on that level where hundreds of thousands and even millions more of dollars are being made and paid. Gotta be careful, man. Gotta be careful.
Yeah, absolute.
So, but yeah, there are some more subjects we can get into here, Reggie, and I had prepared a couple of them. Like, for one, fresh off the bat, next Saturday, we finally get to see the battle between Gervonta Tank Davis and Leo Santa Cruz, man. This is finally upon us, and we are looking to see what transpires. A lot of people talking about Tank is really ready for this one behind the scenes. Leo is showing some, I don't know what to call it, but it's like his approach to this is he's trying to play like, happy to be here, this kind of thing or whatever. But I think they got some tactics up their sleeves or whatever. But I'm looking forward to the fight and what's gonna happen. I'm really looking forward to this one. And it's finally upon us. What are your thoughts about this as we get ready to lead up to this next week, Reggie?
My thoughts are starting to change on how this is going to go, man, because I just can't see Leo going in here getting destroyed the way that I think he is. And I'm wondering, like, is there some other sort of strategy? Is this something that ain't going to play out the way that we think it's going to play out? Is this dude going to come up here and surprise the heck up out of it? Because also, like, looking at Leo, this is a big-time stepper for Tank Davis as well. And how does the styles match up? But looking at it, I'm looking at Tank is going to run through him, but then again, I'm like, dang, could there be something this kid's going to bring out that shocks everyone's predictions? And that's what I'm wondering. But I still kind of feel a little confident that Tank is going to walk through and stop this guy. But then again, Leo has these other advantages, and I wonder if Leo is able to take advantage of these, being the hiding range. He's a very fast fighter. Could he move around on Tank Davis? And I think with a lot of Tank Davis's fights, I think he's fighting more of these cats who are kind of within the same hiding range as him. I think Leo offers a little bit of a different dynamic as far as style. So I don't know. I don't want to see this one going in here to where it's supposed to be a step up and Tank just brutalizes the hell out of this guy. And I don't think Leo's going to set itself up to go in a fight like that, and it could play out that way. I'm wondering what is the strategy for Leo Santa Cruz to save himself in this fight, because the way I view it, I just see Tank destroying him, but then again, Leo may reverse everything that everybody sees in this fight, because after this Tio thing, the way I thought that was going to play out, I'm reversed on a lot of my thoughts on stuff, and I want to see how Tank handles himself. And I don't know. I'm just waiting for that. I'm just waiting to see how this one turns out, man.
Yeah, I'm thinking, as I said early in this consideration for this particular match, Reggie, I'm thinking that if Santa Cruz can take his punch, it's going to be a fight. And that's the thing. We don't know. We'll have to see with the fight. If Tank hits him and obliterates him, like he's done a number of guys, because I saw Tank hit a guy one time. He just hit the guy, I think it was 2 fights ago. He hit the guy in the nose and just busted his nose right away. The guy was leaking like a sieve, from the nose once Tank hit him, right? If Tank is able to do that type of damage to Santa Cruz, the fight won't go long at all, because I don't think he would want to be in there to take a beating, But if it turns out that his punch is strong to Santa Cruz, and remember, some of these guys like Santa Cruz, I'm not saying him, but guys like him, when you see them and they're in matches, and he has fought better opposition, right? He's accustomed to contact. So you let him get accustomed to dealing with what you have to offer, and you don't have no surprise for him or something up your sleeve to really be able to put yourself in a more favorable position or something like that. It can turn south on you, and it become a situation where it's a more difficult battle than you may have, expected it to be for yourself. So that's one of those things that has to come into play as far as your consideration of what can transpire in this fight. And again, I talk about handicaps with fights. That's one of them. If Tank is the Mike Tyson of the division and he can hit guys and get rid of them or whatever, that's what's going to happen. But if he hits the guy and the guy is able to fight back or whatever, then we're going to have to see him win in a different manner. And that's okay, because that's part of boxing. But we're all anxious to see, what's going to transpire. But that's what I have to offer on that. It comes down to that, because as we look at Tank Davis, we think of him as a puncher, right? We think of him as a guy who cleans people's clocks and gets them out of there. But he didn't clean Gamboa's clock and get him out of there. Yeah, he got a late stoppage on a guy that had one bad leg for a number of rounds, but it's not like Gamboa was, totally brutalized and took a battering and stuff like that. It was just a fight of attrition that kind of went until the guy, he couldn't finish the fight. So, hey, when somebody's punching you back and somebody has a high punch volume, sometimes you spend your time with your hands at home blocking and defending and stuff like that, and your output is less because they have a high output and stuff like that. Those are another of those type of intangibles that can come into play in a fight. So, that's what I have to offer on that early on. But I mean, we'll talk about it more as we, as the fight is next Saturday. So it's just one of those things that I thought I'd bring out there, because we want to build it. Here on the Friday night chop session, that's one of the things I've taken a lot of pride in, is that we could talk about these fights when they're on the horizon and they're coming up the next week or the next night or whatever. I want to, raise the attention and awareness of what's at stake, what's online, so people will tune in and enjoy themselves and we can get a show. That's what I want to do. I want to help promote it as much as possible, in a positive sense. So that's what I have to offer on that, Reggie.
Yes, indeed. That's all I have. And then you brought up that Gamboa thing. That's the other thing that makes me wonder, because like you said, he was in there against a hurt Gamboa, and it wasn't like he just beat the mess out of Gamboa or ran through him. So I want to put my thoughts and add that with that too.
Yeah, and Gamboa is an older fighter. How old is he? I don't know. I don't know his age. Is he like 40 or something like that?
Yeah, I think he is, or late 30s or something like that.
Yeah, and Santa Cruz is still relatively young and in his prime. So it's like, here we go. You know what I mean? So there are differences. And we're not talking about the physical difference. We know there's a height and reach factor and stuff like that. All of that is elementary when it comes down to boxing, because most of the guys that Tank Davis fight in his career are going to be taller than him anyway, because he's a midget. But, you do have to look at what someone brings. You have to look at the fact that Santa Cruz has been in against better opposition overall. And again, when we talk about these sanctioning bodies handing guys titles and trinkets all the time before they've even really learned how to become a world-class fighter and champion, there you go. So, that's what. And people may not like the guy, but that damn little Carl Frampton is a good fighter. And Santa Cruz fought him. The guy is smart, he's crafty. And when you prove that you can be on stage with a guy like that, that does a lot for you going forward as a fighter, when you can kind of climb that hill. So we haven't seen Tank in that kind of fight yet. And this is actually that type of fight for him. So can he go in there and rise to the challenge and pass that test? That's what we'll all be tuning in to see. And as we get closer to the fight, we'll have more to say on that. So, just thought I'd mention that, So, and Reggie, the same day, of that, we've got We've got Alexander Usyk and Derek Chisora taking on one another. And I take it that fight, because of where it's being held, another DAZN card, it'll be earlier in the day, hopefully, and we can check that out before we see Tank. So it's going to be another one of those nights when we do our post-fight show where we'll be able to cover more than one event, I guess. But this fight is next week as well. Halloween, man. What are your thoughts on this? Alexander Usyk and Derek Chisora.
Man, this is going to be a big test to see if Chisora, I mean, not Chisora, but if Usyk is who they're trying to make him out to be. And what they're trying to make him out to be is a reincarnation of Holyfield, following that same path of conquering cruiserweight, moving up to heavyweight. And we're going to see if he can do that. Me, I don't think he can. I think Chisora, if Chisora is not brought in this fight, this is a fair fight. None of that fixing or paying a guy to take a dive type crap. I think Chisora is going to stop this guy. If Chisora is going in there fighting the way that he's known to fight, dropping big bombs, because I don't know if Usyk is adjusted to this weight class. I don't think he can adjust to the power that comes from these guys. I know he's been in there with heavyweights or guys competing at heavyweight, beating Hunter as a cruiserweight, and also beating Joe Joyce in one of these tournaments. But this current Joe Joyce, I doubt if Usyk can do anything against this Joe Joyce. This Chisora is a person who fights with ill intentions, and Usyk won't be able to avoid every single punch that's being thrown out there. Whitaker ended up hitting Usyk during that fight they had. Usyk did not like the way that punch felt. And you've seen the way in which Usyk immediately started moving around in that fight. Everything changed when he felt the first shot from Whitaker, who isn't really, to me, I don't know too much about Whitaker, but I don't think he's the biggest of the punchers in that division. The guy could barely move. Chisora is going to be able to close the things off for this guy. He ain't going to be able to move around, dance around this whole fight, and stay clean. I think Chisora is going to set things up properly and catch that guy. And the minute Usyk dare to lay on the ropes, it's a done data for him. But all in all, I think Chisora gets Usyk up out of there. That's what I'm hoping for. I ain't the biggest Usyk fan, and the reason I'm not a fan of it is based on what they're trying to do with him and trying to build him up into being this and that, and I can't rock with that. So I'm looking for Chisora to knock him out.
I'm hoping for a good performance by Chisora, Reggie. But there's one thing that troubles me about this fight and Chisora, because every time that Chisora faced one of the top guys, he's come in as thought of as a quality opponent and whatnot, but he failed. Klitschko, Fury, what's his name? Dillian White.
The White.
Yeah, it's like he's David Hay. You know, it's like he's come in as a guy with a reputation of being someone who's going to put people to the test. But he hasn't upset anybody. He hasn't, and when I say upset, I'm trying to put it like when he faced the guy, he was supposed to be a test for the guy. But he never rose to that occasion where he turned that guy back. And I don't think that they would have taken this fight if they felt like he was the threat to do something to Usyk. So I'm wondering, is he being brought in as an opponent? And if he is, he's going to go down. He's going to go down at a certain time in this fight. And it's going to make Usyk look better than what he might really be at this stage. Remember, this is only his second fight at heavyweight. But there are guys out there he could fight that could really, really test him. And that's not who he's fighting. He's fighting this guy. You know, they got a guy over there named Price. You know what you get when you get Price, right? But the illusion is Chisora is better or more than Price. But is he though? Seriously, is he? Think about it. It's something just to put under your cap. That's all I'm going to say about it. But it's like, I don't believe they would have taken this fight unless he's being brought in to be the opponent. And I'll tell you something, man. A hit upside the head and the guy doing the stanky leg and falling down and everything, he can make it look good. And everybody talking about him being, you know, a guy who's going to test Usyk and everything. A real test from Usyk would be one of the other fighters, like a Joseph Parker or somebody, which they definitely not going to take that right now, right? But I'm just saying, keep your mind open to the fact that if Chisora hits this guy upside the head and he can't take the heavyweight shot, that means that Usyk just didn't have it for heavyweights. But I do believe that there's going to be something different at play here, simply because he's got the complexion. I'm just going to say it like that, bro. And
that's why I said I hope Chisora ain't been brought off. I hope he ain't.
Yeah, because remember, who's got the upside coming out of this fight as far as the future? Chisora, he'll get knocked out in his next fight. Usyk, they can continue to build on the brand. Just something to think about. And I don't say that with disrespect for Chisora. But if you want to prove me wrong, prove to me which of his step-up fights where he was brought in as a test for somebody. Oh, it's going to be a test for Vladimir. This guy's a tough guy. He comes in with the mask on his face. He does this and that, you know, but then he goes out, right? I mean, Fury, I mean, everybody else is just putting it out there. Just something to think about. So, and I hope I ain't, you know, busting anybody's bubbles or anything like that. I'm just saying, man, when you look at boxing, you have to look at it like for what it really is, and not all the time of what you want or what you would like, because it's like, wow, you know. But I would love to see Chisora be victorious. I really would. I'd be pulling for him. So, especially since they'd be trying to mention this guy's name in the same vein of Evander the Real Deal Holyfield. I don't know what people been drinking and smoking and putting in their body, you know, putting contaminants in their bodies, trying to equate this dude on the level with Holyfield. I don't know what the hell is wrong with folks doing that crap. That's just insane. Usyk might not be able to beat Holyfield right now.
Yeah, so you still there, OG?
Yeah. I was quiet after saying that, because and that don't mean I think Holyfield is some kind of god or anything. It's just meaning that that's how little I think of Usyk. It's like I really don't think he's much. That's why if I'm telling you, Reggie, if he has some kind of spectacular win over Chisora, you got to know that Chisora was on the take, man, because he's, look at the perfection out there. Salute to the perfection. He says Chisora should be retiring soon, especially if Usyk wins. That's what I'm trying to say, man. It's like, and this would be one of those fights where they would, okay, this is how I need to go down, you know? Remember when Dillian White hit him with that left hook and knocked him out? He looked really hurt.
Put him in the bed.
Yeah. And in one sense, you could say, was he really out like that? Or did he, was that just supposed to make White look more formidable? Now, it looked like a legitimate punch. He got hit on the chin, yeah, but did it really do that to him? Maybe, maybe not. You've seen him in there against much bigger men like Vladimir Klitschko, and you can't tell me that Dillian White is like Vladimir Klitschko. And Dillian White hit Alexander Povetkin, and he went down and got back up. Knocked White out. I don't know, man. And Big Homie Coop, salute to Big Homie Coop. He says, Usyk let Witherspoon put hands and feet all over him. And he says, I think Chisora will stop him in the later rounds. I hope so, too. I hope that will be what plays out. I'm just leery, man. Just leery. They do some funny stuff over there in the UK, bro. They really do. You have to admit that. They do some funny stuff over there sometimes. Everything isn't always what it appears to be. So, but was there any news that you heard of, Reggie, this week that you would like to drop out here to talk about as a talking point that we haven't covered yet?
No, just that thing with the belts, man. That was kind of really the thing that stood out for me, what I touched on, because everything else I've touched on is politics as of late. But that was the politics of boxing, was the thing we touched on with the statements from Floyd Mayweather, which were right on, but it's statements that people have been making for a long time. So it's good to have a voice like that speak on it. And hopefully he takes his voice a little bit higher to get this game wrapped up, because like you said, it's a mess. But also he has to own up to looking at his part of being in that mess as well, because he has a fighter who shouldn't even be holding on to a belt, and that being Rolly. But hopefully that's the change that's brought to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there is one little talking point we can talk on just a little bit. And that's, the news that came out this week, after the fight, that Vasily Lomachenko is laid up with had surgery or something on his shoulder and everything after the fight. Now all of a sudden, he wants a rematch, and we were told before the fight there was no rematch clause, and we were told before the fight by him that he was going into this fight 100% in shape and no injuries and this and that. And we saw film of him walking on his hands in his camp as he's been known to do. And he showed no ill signs of any kind of ailments or anything during the fight. I am so sick of fighters that if they lost, they don't just take it on the chin and be like, I got to come back bigger, better, and stronger next time out. These guys, man, like Manny Pacquiao, when he lost to Floyd Mayweather, he did the same thing, claiming a shoulder injury and stuff like that. And if you get outclassed or just get your butt whooped, you can defer to the other guy, be like, hey, he got me. I'll be back. That's all you got to say. But we're in a different era now. We got social media and stuff like that. We got what they call it, Photoshop and all this stuff where they can do the effects now. You can put a different person's face on your body and make you look like them and all of this stuff now, man, that what you see ain't necessarily what you're seeing. And it's like, it's sprinkling into our society to the degree that people are actually making their lives into a reality show that is not real. It's like, I didn't do well, so I'm going to create this narrative around myself so people can still have sympathy for me or something and make me, you know, feel good about myself. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here, Reggie?
No, I get exactly what you're saying.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts when it comes down to it about this mess here? This guy, and look at him. He's sitting up there. I put the picture up there, him sitting in the hospital bed with all this stuff on, like, you know, he got his shoulder ripped out of his socket or something, like he was on the NFL field or something. Come on, man. Really?
It's the common thing you see amongst athletes, man, especially in athletes who fight. You're going to rarely see these athletes who are honorable in defeat, especially the ones who have had so much success throughout life. That's where it breeds at. The fighters who aren't used to losing, they have a little bit of, fanfare built around them, media hype built around them. And this just ain't even for boxing. Many of these sports where when things go bad for an athlete, they're going to always create these excuses. And I was wondering if, when I seen him walk out that ring the way he did, I knew there was something else going to come up out of it. And in my mind, I was like, I'm serious. And I was like, because it's the common thing you see with athletes. I've seen it from the high school level, college, all the way up here. Like you see it all the time. When he walked out, I was like, damn, this dude's a poor sport. At first, I'm thinking like, do you got to walk out? Is this part of the COVID protocol? But then I've seen other fights to where both fighters stand there. He immediately left the ring and really didn't embrace the guy. So I'm like, here come this poor sports thing. I'm like, along with what happens after that is a little bit of them going through states of depression as well. But when he pulled out the injury thing, I said, man, this is the fakest crap ever. I said he is full of crap for doing that mess. And even with me having the thoughts of going in a rematch, I still think Lomachenko can beat Teofimo. But I'm like, he is a poor sport, and he is what Teofimo called him, a diva. To behaving that way, laying in the picture with probes, one probe on his arm, the other one on his chest. What the hell are they putting a probe on your arm for if it's jacked up? But following that fight, I paid attention the way he embraced his team in the back. It didn't look like his shoulder was hurting. The way he threw his punches, it didn't look like his shoulder was hurt. You can't throw those kind of punches with a hurt shoulder. You can't throw hard punches like that with your shoulder hurting. And at least if it's hurting, you're going to grimace. He ain't grimaced not once in that fight. He ain't grimaced from when he got hit. So it's like, where was the pain in the shoulder? And then even in the lead up, he spoke about being 100%. You always hear that from fighters. They're 100% following defeat. Oh, I had to pull this. I had a broken that and it healed up and I had to stop training for a few days. And it caught up to me in this fight. I missed 1.5 days, and I needed that 1.5 days because it threw me off in this fight, and I lost by the 1.5 day point. So it's like he's full of crap on that end of stuff. But to see him take his defeat like that, man, it's bull crap. But then again, I understand it because it's a common thing amongst athletes is to one, play the something didn't go wrong, you were hurt. And also the thing of being depressed, like he's gonna go through a bout of depression, man. I know he's in there. The beard probably done grew out. Ain't getting no sleep. Ain't talking to nobody. He's gonna go through that. And that's the normal kind of a phase for these cats. But yeah, that's all it is, man. It's unfortunate to see him bow down like that. He couldn't even give the young kid his credit because he thought it was something. He thought this thing was supposed to be handed to him, but no. He didn't put in the work, and he deserved to suffer the defeat. And I think the defeat was good because he's been accomplishing so much so fast. I think the hunger may have been a little bit gone. He never had nobody come up at him like that. So if he's really inspired to get back in here, Lomachenko comes back as a hungry fighter because if he's suffering from defeat like that, he don't want to taste it again.
Well, another funny point is this. You remember when he was sitting ringside at one of the fights and ESPN showed his record on the screen and didn't show that he had lost? Remember that?
Yeah.
Now, everybody saw him lost. 3 million people. You know what I mean? So it's like, dude, this is your reality here. You know what I mean? The fact that they were able to get away with that and nobody really said much. I mean, we said stuff. You know, we had, as a community here, the LDBC and all of us brothers out here, content creators and channel operators, we were like talking and saying, hey, you know, they showing this guy on TV and showing him as an undefeated fighter. What's up with that? You know what I mean? They just totally erased his record and stuff. Somewhere Orlando Salido was throwing beer cans at the TV. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell were they doing? Well, now, you know, as so many guys have said, it's like, it ain't fun when the rabbit got the gun, is it? It's like, this is your reality, bro. And this is what you're going to be remembered for, too. Acting like this and everything, crying and everything, you know, showing your skirt. Because in boxing, you hang around long enough, somebody gonna get you. You understand? That's all it was. Somebody got him. And he called himself running away from another young man who was supposed to get that smoke, but he ran right into the arms of another guy that he didn't expect and didn't respect, and he got what was coming to him. Period. End of story. That's all that was. And now you got to lay up, look in the mirror. ESPN going to show the highlights. It's in their vaults now. You can see it anytime on demand or whatever, because it's like, this is the reality of boxing. And for people like him, there's the hype jobs and people like Triple G waiting around for something or someone to do something, you know, and find him another stiff to fight and all of that. Hey, this is your reality right here. 24/7, 365. You ain't going to escape from it. You're going to get exactly what you deserve. People going to snatch your dress off and they going to see you got fake boobs and fake butt cheeks and everything, because that's what you guys are. You're fake. And it couldn't happen to a worse dude. Period. So we can move on from that one, Reggie. There's one more. It was announced a couple days ago that this guy, Mike Conlon, Irish Mike Conlon, is going to be taking on Isaac Dogboe. Apparently, Conlon's people are now, you know, brave enough to try to put him in the ring with a contemporary fighter. Now, what's interesting about this is I think only because Isaac Dogboe has lost to Navarrete a couple of times, and the way that he lost in his second fight, where his dad let him almost take a beating to the death, they decided like maybe he might be ripe for the pickings for a fighter like Conlon. But I don't think that Conlon has shown a great deal of punching power, although he has shown that he's tough, he's rugged. So did you hear about this? That they're shooting for December for these two to match up.
No, I didn't hear about that. But I think, like I say, being long in the tooth, I think that's kind of where Dogboe is. And I think, like you said, his father put him in the ring in a fight, and to which should have been stopped. I think Conlon may have catch Dogboe at the right moment, and it's a good moment for Conlon, and to put the name on his, I guess, to put the name on his resume. I don't see why Conlon, what Conlon's shooting for, but Dogboe ain't the same Dogboe that he was, and it was based on those two fights. Those fights took a lot out of him, and my opinion, I think Conlon can get Dogboe. It's just not the same Isaac Dogboe.
Yeah,
that's the reason, and that's the reason why you stop fights.
Exactly, and for whatever reason, his dad treated that rematch with Navarrete like it was a kumite or something. He let the guy, it was a battle to the death damn near. It was like, why would you let your son get beaten up like that? He was, I mean, it was in some ways, it was worse than the Wilder and Fury situation, where Wilder just, he was in a bad situation and it didn't look good, and they stopped the fight. They threw the towel in. They could have stopped this fight with him in the corner on a stool and said, hey, he broke his hand or he hurt himself or whatever. To take the punishment off of the fighter. You don't want that last punch to get in, because with each damaging blow, what happens is the fighter has a little bit taken out of him. And so it's like, even if he's going to come back and fight in the future, he's not coming back as a full glass. He's coming back, that glass has been emptied. And I didn't like seeing that. Very upset about it. And just remember, a couple of fights before Navarrete, Dogbe was looking really good on ESPN. Remember his fights?
Yeah, I thought something special of the kid.
Yeah, so it's like you took the things away from him that were really good. Because I could see, like, the first fight, right, that Navarrete just was a little more than what they thought. But what was supposed to transpire was he go back to the drawing board, work on some things, take on a couple of opponents that may have similar dimensions as Navarrete, but not maybe the type of power that could hurt him, to allow him to learn how to fight a bigger, more rangier guy and stuff like that. You have to work these things through. And they didn't do that. They just came back hoping for a different result without having, Dogbe rebuild himself and everything. And so in that second fight, he took a severe beating and a beat down and is nowhere near anymore what he was prior to the first Navarrete fight. So it's like, you're absolutely right. Conlon may be able to do some things here, and they may be catching him at the right time due to he not having much left in the tank. And that's a shame, because he's not an old guy at all, but he's limited. And sometimes when guys take a couple, remember, each fighter has a different threshold of endurance. Like, I might be able to fight 15 to 25 fights. You might be able to fight 30 to 40. You know what I'm saying? And it's like my endurance and threshold for taking shots and stuff may be different from yours. And this is how it works in boxing. And that's the other aspect of coaching and working with guys that you have to be able to be in tune with and to see. If you can't see a guy's regression, if you can't see that he don't have it anymore, you heard me say earlier in this show that I feel that Chocolatito is a shop-worn fighter. Well, I said he's a worn, and that's what I could see simply by him fighting this younger, fresher guy who didn't have a lot of power. And there were things that he was able to do successfully. So imagine if he's fighting another world-class guy like Estrada, or even the guy Quadras who Estrada fought tonight. They're going to hurt him. They're going to hurt Chocolatito. And not only are they going to hurt him, they're going to make a name off of him, because it's like his people can't see that he shouldn't be in there with certain types of people. See, when you've had as many fights as he's had, which is over 40-something fights, you can begin to steer him away from the dangers in the sport and still have him winning and looking good and fade on off into the sunset. But you can't be putting him in there with tough fight after tough fight after tough fight. Otherwise, you're going to run into the Meldrick Taylor problem, which is what happened after Meldrick Taylor lost to Chavez in a most brutal fight where it took so much out of him. And then Main Events and Lou Duva and them kept putting him in there against tough opposition. Terry Norris? Are you serious? I mean, you have to be able to see these things if you're looking out for the best interests of your fighter. And that's supposed to be his dad. I don't know if his dad was thinking, we are warriors, we have to go out there and do this. No, man. He's going to have a life after boxing. You want him running around eating mashed potatoes and stuff like that, eating applesauce and stuff the rest of his life. What is wrong with you? I don't know, man. I went on my little rant there, Reggie. I don't know if you got anything else you want to say about it. You can, bro. But I just feel like you may be very right with this. They may be catching him at the right time. And I just hope that Isaac don't take a beating.
Yeah, no, that's all that I had on that one.
So there was also some word this week that Jaime Munguia is looking to come back, and he's even angling, calling out Triple G, which is, what's funny, Reggie? They might make that fight. And the funny thing about it is, Munguia is probably going to eat, if they do fight, Munguia is probably going to eat Triple G alive because he's a young man. You know what I mean? And he's a young growing man. So Triple G is really, I think he's shot. He's trying to find a way to stay relevant in the sport, but his best days are behind him. And you can only go to the well so many times fighting guys who don't belong in the ring with you. But I really believe that this might be the thing that they setting him up for, to feed him off to someone like this. And, it be a situation where, a guy like Munguia fight Triple G and beat him up and knock him out or something like that. They're going to be like, oh, Munguia defeated the great Triple G or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You can kind of see it because that's what they do right now in this modern era of sports. They ain't going to let somebody like Jamal beat him up, but they'll let this guy come in there and clean his clock for him. What are your thoughts on that?
What, Munguia versus Triple G?
Yeah.
I hope Munguia can do it. But Munguia a fool who walk into punches too. So that's the other side that leaves the opportunity for Triple G to get him up out of there. Unless Munguia done tuned up on some things, he's just a young, spirited fighter is what I see in Munguia. He can put pressure on Triple G, fight at this high volume, but like they say, the one thing that don't leave is power. And Triple G will mess around and catch this dude who leaves himself vulnerable to way too many shots. I mean, Munguia have been in way too many wars at this young period in his career. Wait, matter of fact, I want to pull him up because I don't know when the last time Munguia done fought. Even without this pandemic, it was like the guy's just too wild of a fighter. I hope he can knock Triple G out because I don't like Triple G as well. But I'm a little skeptical of what he can do against Triple G. They didn't kind of fast track him into the game, rushed him into a lot of these fights. But it's like, what is he really going to do out here against these heavy hitters like a Triple G? And I'm not sure how well Munguia can take a punch from a guy like Triple G. Oh, Munguia fought earlier this year against a lower tier competition in Gary O'Sullivan. Matter of fact, I believe if I recall that fight, O'Sullivan was having good success against Munguia in that fight.
Yeah, that's the guy with the funny mustache, right?
Yes. And remember, he was getting hit with those crazy shots. Now, and Sullivan ain't the most skilled and best time fighter. I can't even describe O'Sullivan, but if O'Sullivan can touch on Munguia, Triple G will tear Munguia apart. And I think that's just the way it goes because the guy's just too flawed defensively. He just looks to go in there and think he can just go out there and just bombs away on opponents. And defense is a second thought to this guy. I think his offense tends to be what he thinks is his defense. If he thinks if he can throw a lot of punches that will stop an opponent from throwing back at him. Triple G would clean his clock out. That's just the unfortunate way I see it. But if he gets by that, they'll probably try to set him up for, he'll be the first guy to get the shot at Canelo.
Yeah. Yeah, but that, you know, he's being trained by Eric Morales too. So it's interesting because Morales has recent experience with ring competition and everything. So it could be a good fit. We haven't seen a lot of them, their results of working together. I know that Sullivan guy was one of the first fights since they decided to unite. But I think he can be coached through a victory over Triple G. I think Triple G has really slipped that much, Reggie. He really has. He spent so much time wasting time avoiding real quality opposition and only wanting to fight Canelo. Remember, the thing about Canelo was this. Canelo can't knock him out because Canelo don't punch that great. Okay? That's why I said the Kovalev thing was more questionable than people realize. But you can hit Triple G. If you can hit Triple G and you got some power, Triple G is in trouble. But he knows that he can make the most money fighting Canelo and he don't have to worry about being knocked out. That's the thing. If you don't think that certain fighters think about that aspect of themselves, they'll fight a guy 100 times as long as they know the guy can't knock him out. But if you know a guy is a threat to take your head off and decapitate you, you ain't going to keep trying to go in there with that dude. You know what I'm saying? But because of the name and the fame of Canelo, it looks good that I want to do it 3 times with this guy. But it's about the money that comes with it and the prestige that it is because it's Canelo Alvarez. But it's not one of the young lions of the sport, Andre, or even Billy Joe Sanders, or even Maul Charlo. It's like he's trying to stay away from those guys. But this is a guy where they will probably look at and probably take that chance because he's young and they may not feel that he is that much of a threat, and it could come back and bite him in the butt. That's where his age would show up. So, but that's what I have to say about that. That's what my thoughts are. It's been a great chop session, Reggie. We went through 2 hours like nothing, bro. This is my goodness. We were talking tonight, man. Go ahead and give us your final thoughts as we close out and let everybody know what's happening with your channel.
Yes, indeed, man. Thank you guys for coming through, man, and tuning in to the chop session on the late one, man. We rolled through it. You guys catch me on both of the channels, man. I've been running both channels simultaneously. Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens, and also the backup with just the 2 at the end. But everything is everything, man. Rolling smooth. I just gotta clean up on some of the stuff I talk about, but politically, I'm just passionate. So that's the only thing creating the strikes that I did have, which brought the main channel down for a little bit. But I'll probably get another strike. Me politically, that's just who I am. Fired up by it. I want to see political change in this country. I want to see a new dynamic, a diverse dynamic when it comes to who leads this country. And I'm motivated by that, even if it takes to the casket drop. So I'll push my kids into being whoever's the next leader. So that's just my passion. So that's why I talk the way I talk with it. That's why I ain't in a line with a lot of people on my political views. So it's just what it is. But it's still all love with me, except for no love for Trump in my book. But that's all I got, man. But great chop session.
Yeah, that's that political thing that my man Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens have. But hey, we need people out there like that too, man. When you operate like that, you're a soldier, you know, and we always need soldiers to go into battle, man. That's what some people don't understand. But it's like, hey, you don't win wars in dresses, okay? So that's just a fact, and a painful one for those who don't want to recognize it. So, yeah, I appreciate what you do. content you put out there, and even some of the subjects that you guys talk about when you have your brothers on there with you, and how you guys move with that. So just know that, hey, I have an appreciation for listening in. I want to thank everybody that's out there in the chat. Everybody that was out there peeping through the blinds and bushes and everything, because I know it's quite a few of y'all as well. But just know that you're always welcome over here on the Stormybman channel to listen to this boxing content that we talk about. And we will be back tomorrow evening after the fight card between Lipinets and Clayton. And we'll have a post-fight show on that where we'll cover that, as well as the Usyk and no, that's not tomorrow, right? That's next Saturday. But we will be covering the Showtime card for tomorrow night. So for my brother, Boxing Conversation with Reggie Owens, this is Stormy B, man. We're going to get on up out of here. You guys enjoy your weekend. And that's it. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. Have a good evening.